Have you ever felt pressure to follow a certain life path, whether marriage or staying single? Jesus and his apostles addressed these exact questions in ways that revolutionized how we think about relationships and purpose. In first-century Jewish culture, marriage wasn't just expected. Rabbis taught that unmarried men were incomplete, yet into this context, Jesus introduces teachings that elevate both marriage and singleness as honorable paths. The Pharisees approach Jesus with a loaded question about divorce in Matthew chapter 19. They're testing him, trying to trap him in theological controversy. But Jesus redirects the conversation to God's original design. He takes them back to Genesis chapter 2, verses 24 and 25, where God establishes marriage. A man leaves his father and mother and becomes united to his wife. The two become one flesh. Jesus emphasizes that marriage represents a profound spiritual union. It's not merely a social contract or cultural tradition. When God joins two people together, Jesus says, no one should separate them. This teaching elevates marriage beyond contemporary Roman and Greek practices where divorce was casual and common. But here's where Jesus surprises everyone. His disciples respond by saying if marriage is that binding, maybe it's better not to marry at all. Instead of correcting them, Jesus agrees that some people are called to singleness. In Matthew chapter 19, verse 12, he explains that some remain unmarried for the kingdom of heaven. He's validating singleness as a legitimate, honorable calling. This was revolutionary. Jesus himself lived as a single man, modeling that human completeness doesn't require marriage. He demonstrates that singleness can be purposeful, meaningful, and wholly devoted to God's work. Decades later, the Apostle Paul expands on these teachings in his first letter to the Corinthians. The church in Corinth is struggling with questions about relationships, sexuality, and devotion to God. Paul writes with pastoral wisdom, addressing both married and single believers. In 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 7, Paul reveals his personal preference. He wishes everyone could be single like him, devoted entirely to ministry. But he immediately acknowledges that each person has their own gift from God. Some are gifted for marriage, others for singleness. Neither is superior. Both are divine callings. Paul explains practical advantages of singleness. Single people can focus completely on pleasing the Lord without divided interest. They have freedom for ministry, travel, and service that married people may not have. In verses 32 through 34, he describes how unmarried individuals can be concerned with the Lord's affairs, while married people necessarily care for their spouses. But Paul isn't devaluing marriage. He affirms it as good and honorable. In verse 28, he clearly states that those who marry haven't sinned. He recognizes that marriage provides companionship, intimacy, and mutual support. He instructs married couples to fulfill their obligations to each other and not deprive one another. Paul addresses a crucial point that resonates today. If someone struggles with self-control regarding sexual desire, they should marry. It's better to marry than to burn with passion, he writes in verse 9. This isn't romantic, but it's honest and practical. Paul acknowledges human sexuality while providing a framework for honoring God. For those already married, Paul's instructions are clear. Don't seek divorce. If separation occurs, remain unmarried or reconcile. Marriage is a covenant commitment that reflects Christ's relationship with the church. It requires sacrifice, forgiveness, and perseverance. What makes these teachings so powerful is their countercultural nature, both then and now. In ancient times, they elevated singleness when society demanded marriage. Today, they elevate marriage's permanence when culture treats it casually, while simultaneously honoring singleness when society often views it as incomplete. The underlying both teachings is this: your relationship status doesn't define your worth or purpose. Whether married or single, you can fully serve God and live meaningfully. Your value comes from being created in God's image and redeemed by Christ. Paul summarizes in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 17. Each person should live as a believer in whatever situation the Lord has assigned them. This is the rule Paul establishes in all churches. Contentment and purpose aren't found in changing your circumstances, but in faithfully following God where you are. These teachings free us from societal pressure and comparison. They remind us that God calls people to different paths. Marriage isn't mandatory for completeness. Singleness isn't a waiting room for real life. Both are legitimate callings where we can honor God, serve others, and experience fulfillment. The lasting impact of these biblical principles shapes Christian thinking today. They provide framework for viewing relationships through eternal perspective, rather than temporary satisfaction. They challenge us to evaluate our motivations, whether we're pursuing marriage or embracing singleness. Most importantly, they point us toward the ultimate relationship that satisfies every human heart, our relationship with God through Jesus Christ.